Good evening, and welcome to We the Village, produced by Ron Hall, and I am your host, Sharonda Allen. Today, I have my wonderful guest, Dr. Deborah Hodge.
Yes.
Welcome to We the Village.
Thank you so much. Good to be here with you.
Yes, it's so nice. I would like to first ask you to tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I do have a few of those.
Oh,
one
yes.
is an educator,
Yes.
One as a musician. I hail originally from Lexington, Kentucky. I've been in New York most of my adult life, though, so New York is most like home. I've taught for a number of years. Again, I'm an educator, and I've taught elementary music, middle school music, high school. As far as a musician, I am a contemporary jazz vocalist, and I also write, and love to perform, and look forward to doing a lot more of that, getting back in the saddle.
You know, we have so much in common.
And even you're a southpaw. I'm a southpaw as well.
Yes, real bad.
There you go.
Okay, you know, special people be thinking I write mine.
That's right. That's right.
As I am an educator and a singer as well.
Are you?
Yes, I'm a neo soul.
Okay.
And I love music, and I went to a performing arts high school. So let me ask you, where did your musical background come from? Where did you start singing?
I've been singing practically all of my life. Both of my parents sang and played piano. And again, I'm from Kentucky, and I went to an HBC in Kentucky, Kentucky State University.
All right.
And you're talking about some talent that was there. Oh, my goodness. So that was a great place to hone my skills.
Nice.
And later went on and finished at Eastern Kentucky University. And but basically, most of my training came from the time that I lived in Kentucky.
There's another parallel. My first college was in HBCU as well.
Oh, really?
Hampton University.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Now, don't tell me you're a member of a sorority.
Not at all, because while I was
Well,
there.
Just asking.
No, let me tell you. The things that they did to join, I was like, no thanks. I have plenty of friends already. So that's why none of my friends pledged undergrad. Some might have done, grad chapter, but it was kind of rough, and I was like, nah, it's all right.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a lot of commonality. So how long have you been teaching?
Let's see. I think in the classroom now I have about 23 years or so. I took a break. I taught in Kentucky for some years, left there, came to New York, stayed for about 12 years. But when I first arrived in New York, I didn't have my New York teaching certification. So I worked in pharmaceutical for about 10 years.
Nice, okay.
And so, but again, probably about 23, almost 25 years in the classroom.
You know, that's so interesting, because I started in education in 1995.
Oh, did
so
you?
I'm in, this will be my 23rd year as well.
Really?
Yeah, we have so much. Oh my God,
Yeah.
we're twins, parallel universe.
All right.
So that's beautiful, and I love when people get into education and they stay with it, because we need people who really do this from the heart, and not just something to pass the time and just go on and skip to
Great
something
vacations
else.
and all that.
Oh my goodness, love it. Snow days.
Yeah, but I'm saying so many people get into it because of the great vacations, and and that's just not why you should be there.
Yeah, it's a benefit.
It's a benefit, definitely.
But it's so much more.
Yes.
And the impact on other human beings and creating citizens is what's important.
Right.
So now, what subject do you teach?
I am a music teacher.
Oh, lovely.
I'm currently teaching electronic keyboarding. Not that I'm a pianist, but I know enough to teach students. My first instrument was clarinet. I was a clarinet major in college, and I play brass as well. So I've picked up some other things along the way.
Right.
But I'm currently teaching keyboarding.
So, and you play clarinet, and what else do you play?
Baritone horn. I'm a brass player as well. And so I don't play as much clarinet as I used to, so I've kind of transferred some of that love to soprano sax. And so I'm playing that, and I'm probably killing some folks' ears by trying to learn how to play guitar. So I'm doing that now. And a little bit of kalimba work, which I really love to do.
Wow. So what motivated you to go into playing guitar?
I have always loved the guitar. I love music, I love chords, I love melody, and I've always admired guitarists. And so I've tried it a couple of times, and hopefully I'm doing a lot better at it now, even though I still have a lot of woodshedding to do.
Understood.
A lot of woodshedding.
Yeah. So in that vein, what challenges do you face with regard to your personal practicing?
The most difficult part is finding time to practice.
Oh,
You know, I always think, why is it that I don't practice like I did when I was a kid? It's like, duh, you're not a kid. You actually have, you know, a life. You're an adult. You have a lot more obligations and commitment to other things. And so that's played a large part, because practice is just something you have to do on a daily basis. I tell my students to do that, and unfortunately, there are no shortcuts for me. So it's just finding the time.
Yeah, so, you know, let's get into some conversations about the music business. I kind of laughed a little as I was getting to the question, because, you know, I'm not in it for a reason. I've seen too much, and it's like, no thanks. So what are your experiences in the music industry and music education? You know, what?
Well, I don't have as much experience in the music industry per se. I think that there's been an influence, basically, from the industry to, say, my students, because I tell them, I need you to practice. And this is when I'm teaching band, because I'm really a band teacher. That's my forte as far as education. And I tell them to practice, and then I realize, well, you know, there aren't enough venues for them to even go out and perform in. So I'm telling them to do something when there's no, I can't say, well, if you get this good, I know where you can go and get. You can play at so and so. You can play at this hall, that hall. You know, back in the day that used to be, but that's not as much true as it used to be in the past. So I feel somewhat hypocritical saying practice, knowing that there just aren't enough venues to receive them.
Well, you know, that gives you another responsibility. Create events and opportunities for recitals. And, you know, another thing that it would be great is when to give them practice and opportunities to play. When people are having formal affairs and events, have those students to come and be the background music. And it'll be an opportunity for them to showcase themselves, and also for future events, and maybe they could get paid and, you know, maybe take a donation. Because I agree, as myself going to graduating from Arts High School in Newark, we were performing everywhere all the time. As a singer, we were always competing, and since I was 4, I've been performing on stage.
Great.
Yeah,
great.
So I'm a wedding singer, a funeral singer, I mean, everything. I'm going to be in a cooking contest on March 25th, Women Who Rock in the Kitchen. Go check that out, Google that. And I'm going to be singing to open the ceremony,
Wonderful.
to the event.
Wonderful.
So, you know, there's always places to do things, and you just have to create them.
Well, and that sounds wonderful, but unfortunately, it's just not that simple. Right now, we're fighting to keep music programs in schools,
And that is a point.
so
Yes.
that's a
Yes.
huge feat that we're trying to
Yes.
overcome, and that's a process, because
Yes.
once you take music and arts out of public schools, when they are reinstated, it's a process to build them back to the level of where they were when it left, or when it was, you know. Hate to say gotten rid of them, basically, but that's what it is. And so it's a very tedious, cumbersome, very concerning process.
It is, because there are leaders or people who are supposed to be leaders who are very short-sighted and don't understand the impact of having that musical discipline in your educational background as a child, as an adult. You know, I know that the discipline that it gave me, as far as being able to be ready and to be on point, and, you know, have that confidence and present myself in front of others. I've never been shy. And some people are like, oh, you can get up and talk? I mean, no, you need to be able to get up and talk.
That's right.
You know, and that's a deficiency that our people are having. You know, so our people are hiding behind keyboards, and that's another story. You know, so do you think that one has an influence over the other, the music industry and music education?
Oh, without a doubt. It's kind of the same scenario that, you know, every young boy, and I'll just say boys, for example, in elementary, they all want to go to the NBA.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with music. You know, you have not just boys, males and females. Everybody wants to be a great rapper. You know, everybody thinks, yeah, I'm good enough to do this. You know, I've heard so-and-so. And it's the same false sense of security.
It is.
It won't happen for most boys to go to the NBA. It won't happen for most kids or young people to become world-renowned rappers. And so, unfortunately, and I've never been an anti-rapper by any means. Of course, as a musician, I'm led more to other forms of music, but children are so talented. And I think that we're losing so much talent because of the facade of, I'm going to be a rapper.
Yes.
Well, you may not be a rapper, but you might be a great saxophonist. You might be a fantastic drummer. You might be a great vocalist, and we'll never know, unfortunately.
Right.
So that's the concerns I have with that.
You know, and what's disturbing for me about the music industry is that it's not necessarily about talent. It's about the gimmick.
Oh, yeah.
It's about who they push, who they promote.
Oh, yes.
Because I have seen plenty. I was supposed to be a big superstar in the music industry, big singer. And I started performing at 4, like I said, but I started going to the studio at 12, recording.
Really?
Yeah. And I, as a teenager, had been, throughout my entire life, I was, performing. And then I got to a point where I was about 20, 21. I was working with some producers that it was just too much. And, I had already recorded at so many studios in the city with, big artists like Queen Latifah doing background vocals and references and things. But some of the things that I watched behind the scenes, I told my students, you don't want this industry unless you have a lot of strong family members who are going to be supportive, that know the industry, because it'll eat you alive. I didn't allow it to eat me alive because I saw someone else being eaten, and I said, no thanks, I do not want to be the meal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I'm so grateful that I did avoid that and get into education. But of course, I walk into the room like, hello, here she is on stage. Yes. But it helps with the ambiance. With the students, like, they're going along with this crazy. But it's good for personality. It's good for interaction and relationship. Right. And it helps the kids to know that you can express yourself. You don't have to be humble. I just told somebody on the phone, somebody said, oh, I learned to be humble. No, I didn't learn to be humble. I learned to be confident and assertive. And I learned that people who are told to be humble are people who always try to talk and be out there, and they're just not talented, and they don't have a whole lot of good stuff to say.
Well, they have to overcompensate.
They have to overcompensate. And that's why people tell them, you got to be humble because you're really not, meeting the mark. So if we teach our children to, with that discipline of music, to work hard, to study hard, be the best at it, hopefully they'll understand the quality of that real music and instrumentation and not want to deal with some of this ridiculous rap music that may be out here saturating the airwaves, that is just dumbing people down, and that's just what it is. There's no two ways about it.
Right.
So now let me ask you, because of all this, how often do you still continue to influence your students to play their instruments?
Still consistently, because when you have to sit down with an instrument, it's mano a mano. It's you and your instrument in your own little private world.
Yes.
And it gives you time to kind of do some introspective within yourself. And it takes a lot to sit down every day or even every other day in a room with an instrument by yourself for 30 minutes. And now, if we could get them to do 15, we'd be happy. But ideally, you want a good 30 minutes. And even for myself, I should practice longer. But if you can maintain the discipline to do that, you'd be surprised at other things that discipline would carry over into.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I tell my students all the time. It's not the most fun thing to do. As much as I know what the end result can be, sometimes it's like I start to practice my sopranos, like, I could be doing this, I could be at the mall, I could be shopping. It's like, no, but this is what I need to be doing right now. So, that discipline, there's no replacement for discipline.
None.
It just can be I won't say the panacea to life, but it surely is a deal breaker.
Yes.
If you have it versus if you don't have it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
In every arena of life.
Yes.
And, you make me think about you learning the guitar, and I had a colleague math teacher who was teaching some of the young men how to play guitar in the classroom and after school and things. And I thought it was such a beautiful thing. And they would kind of say, Miss Allen, look, I'm playing. And I'm like, And it's a beautiful, wonderful thing for the kids to do. So in that vein, why, I know why it's important. Why do you think it's important to play an instrument?
Again, because of the discipline and the self-gratification you get.
Yes.
I remember when I started out and I would play a few notes and I'd squeak and squawk. And my mom is a retired music teacher.
Nice.
So it wasn't one of those where my mom was like, it wasn't like
Yeah.
that. It's like, just keep practicing, babe, just keep
Yes.
practicing. And once I started seeing improvements, then that
Yes.
was inspiration to take it to the next level.
Yes.
And the next, and the next. And before you knew it, I was, really pretty good back in the day.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. So now let's shift the conversation momentarily.
Okay.
As a teacher, do you believe teachers should be armed?
I think that is the worst idea anybody has ever come up with, let alone having the audacity to start promoting it. That's not our job.
No,
And you're an educator. I mean, that's not what we signed on to do.
No.
It's tough enough just to go in there and educate a child. And that sounds simple, educate a child, but there are so many variables that come into play, when you try to educate a child. Home environment, peer environment, self-respect. How do they feel about themselves? And then you want to bring something so ridiculous into the environment. That's not safe for anybody, whether you're trained with a firearm or not. The classroom, the school building is really not a place for firearms. Now, I know some schools probably have police in there who are possibly armed. That's different. Ideally, we'd rather they not even have to be armed.
Right.
Ideally.
Right.
But to say or suggest that classroom teachers should voluntarily be armed, no, there's no way. That makes no sense.
In having this discussion with my students, I am just as disturbed and disgusted by the ridiculous so-called leadership that would actually put that into the universe.
Right.
My student said, suppose a child comes up and snatches the gun away from you while you're teaching.
Anything can happen.
Anything. And I said, that's an important consideration. And I said, think about it. Would you know which teachers have guns? Would it make everyone respect all the teachers? And then there's been articles and research stating that, a lot of teachers would, be victimizing their students. Oh, I felt threatened, when we deal with, some of the discrimination and the lack of diversity that, our children would be the ones. It would be just like the cop saying, oh, I thought he was reaching for a weapon. He was reaching for his pencil. So we got a lot to unpack with that insanity. But the problem is that there's one action that needs to happen that would fix and improve so much of the idiocracy that's going on. And that would be the removal of the ridiculous person that has no business there, who's been colluding with the Russians.
Right.
And that's Donald Trump. I'm going to say it because it's the truth.
Right.
And let that go down in history because it's ridiculous. It's awful.
If everyone else would do their job, we wouldn't have this conversation. If the legislatures, if Congress, if Senate, state legislatures, everybody else needs to do their job, and we won't need guns in the classroom. You can't be so intimidated by a group.
Right. You can't.
That you're going to let them rule everything. Because they're lining your pockets, well, maybe you should reconsider that.
But those are people who are empty of morality, empty of spirit, empty of humanity. And I think that we are suffering right now. And I don't know if America will be able to recover if this wild person stays in office any longer. So let me ask you, do you feel comfortable in your classroom right now?
I do, but I also have moments when I look over my shoulder. If I'm in a large area by myself, or I have insecurities now that I have not had until recent.
Wow.
Not necessarily of my students, but just the whole scenario. Is people are just doing such weird and crazy things now, and
everybody's losing it.
right. But still, most people are good. Most students are good.
Yes, they are.
It just takes that few to give everyone else a sense of paranoia and what is going on. But again, I do have some insecurities that I didn't have, say, a year or two ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, back to the music industry.
Okay.
Who are some of the artists that you consider to be the most talented out right now?
And I know that's very subjective, but you asked me.
Yeah, sure did.
Okay. I don't know if you ever listened to Sirius Radio. And they have these spots where they'll have different vocalists come on and sing the call letters and without
really?
a tune or a tone?
Auto-tune.
Auto-tune. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. It is so unbelievable how awful they really are. And I'm like, folks, if you would listen to what I just heard, you wouldn't buy their recordings. You know, now back in the day,
it's the gimmicks.
and I'm going back in my day, the 70s, 80s, when it wasn't so much, you didn't have to have a whole posse on stage to have a great concert unless it was your Pips for Gladys Knight or, you know, the Temptations. But all you needed was a microphone and a great voice, and you wowed your audience. And that's when we had informed listeners.
Well, you know what? And that's with society. It is about control. And that's what I don't appreciate. You know, but let me ask you, now, you have a television show similar to this one. What is the premise of your show?
I'm glad you asked that. The premise of the show is to highlight what, in my opinion, is true artistry.
Yes.
And I interview people in all realms of the arts. I've had a Gucci designer. I mean, I stretch that artistry label out there. Dancers, painters. I go to schools of art. So I take it, and I'm a one-woman show, not by choice, but because I feel that passionately about it. It must be done. And so I take my cameras and I go out and I film. I sit, I talk with them and interview, because as an educator and as a musician, I feel like our young people have been robbed.
Yes.
They really have not seen true artistry in the pure natural form that it was intended and that it was created for. It's been masked by so many other things. And don't get me wrong, I think technology is a wonderful thing. It's how I got to your studio today via technology. But again, you have these programs who make folks sound like they're great singers, and they have no sense of pitch. Nice. And so I continue to say that especially the millennials are a generation, and many people might disagree with me, but I think they're a generation that's grown up without pitch, because they've listened to rap most of their life, which does not really involve a pitch, versus when I grew up, it was, we sang on the bus every day. We sang a cappella, so we knew how to make it right. We didn't need a lot of fanfare. And so I created the show to say, this is what it really looks like. This is what it sounds like. This is what you possibly have been blessed with, but we may never know. So I try to highlight artists in so many different genres and veins, to give them some highlight that possibly or probably they may never get otherwise. And so that they have a chance to share. And I actually started out with just students. My show was called SETA, which was an acronym for Students Excited About the Arts.
Nice.
But then I ran into adults who said, hey, you know, I'm over here, don't forget me. And so I changed the show name to Arts Resuscitation with Dr. Hodge and included in adults. So I've had a wonderful time doing. I've been airing now for about 7 years. Again, I'm a one-woman show, not by choice. So I'm the host, the writer, the videographer, the editor, the producer. You know, you name it.
Right?
Right.
I love it. I love it. So let me ask you, how long has your show aired, and also where do you film?
So
You're
again,
like a roving filming person, right?
Yes, I've been airing now for about 7 years. I go to the city. If I'm traveling, I take my cameras with me, and I try to never miss an opportunity. But usually I do. I go to my guests wherever they are and sit and speak with them. I did have one recently that was not a musician, but it was so historical that I could not pass it up. So, but typically it's for artists. When I visited the National Museum of African American History and Culture, I did some filming there, and so I'm in the process of editing that footage and trying to get that aired.
I love it. I love it. So let me ask you, in my last few moments that I have, I could go on for hours talking to you.
It's great.
Thank you. How would you like to see schools and the educational setting change?
Especially with people of color, and I've seen it over and over for so many years, parents have to become more involved in their child's education. You cannot leave it up to the teacher. You cannot leave it up to the administration or the board of ed. You must go to PTA. You must check with your child's assignments. You must communicate with the teacher. You must be sure that they're behaving in class, that they are following directions. And it sounds simple, following directions, but that can be, as you know, quite a feat in a class. I just think that, it's usually when you have back to school night or PTA, it's the students' parents who are doing great that always show up.
Of course. It's like, thanks preaching to the choir.
If you have 2 or 3 jobs and that's what you have to have, we understand that. Get a representative, get a family representative to represent you in your stead. Get someone there every time, and have contact numbers in your children's folders. So many times I've had to try to contact parents for various reasons. That number is no longer in service, or just no way of getting in contact with them. And they may have 3 numbers and none of them are valid. If it were an emergency, I'd be very frightful as to what could happen.
Right.
So parental involvement is just so critical.
It's a big thing.
It
and I
really
think people
is.
have become a little more apathetic about that nowadays. But let me ask you, what is the name of your show and where can we view episodes?
It's Arts Resuscitation with Dr. Hodge, and I'm on YouTube. Yes,
also,
they've kind of scrambled them for some reason. I've noticed lately, but I've seen another Dr. Hodge. He's a male teacher, a male, and there are other Arts Resuscitation. So just be careful. You usually see my face. Most of the time, I'm with the person that I'm interviewing. So Arts Resuscitation with Dr. Hodge.
Nice. So what are some of the goals that you have for your show? In the future. Some upcoming things, because I know Arts Resuscitation, I love the name. You're trying to resuscitate, bring it back to life. I love it.
Thank you.
And I know you started with the kids and you're dealing with adults, but what are some of those goals you have coming up? And I would love to come on your show.
Oh, I'd love to have you. Would love to have you. Maybe you'll sing for us.
Of course.
She's a natural.
She made that up. Okay. I'm sorry, what are some of your goals?
The main goal that I'm working toward is I'm actually trying to take it up a level.
Okay.
I'm airing strictly on cable television now, which has been wonderful. But I'd like to have a larger audience. I'd like to have for people to actually see the vision that I have for my show. It's so much more than you will see on YouTube, even though I think the episodes are great. But again, I'd like to take it to the larger screen. So that's what I'm working toward. And
I was just thinking, we both need to go to Oprah, and we need shows on Oprah's network. It's on the larger screen. Okay. So, and I love your ambition, because, sometimes people, I'm doing this, I'm going to stay small. No, we need a larger venue for what we're doing, and Oprah should bring us on. And I'm so delighted and grateful to have brought you on, Deborah Hodge.
Thank you. I appreciate being here very much.
Yes. And I want to say thank you, everyone, for tuning in to We the Village.